are listening to Pub Royalty Queen Podcast, a place to empower women of color in the music business.
Welcome to another episode of Pub Royalty Queen Podcast. This is your host, Janisha Jones, back with another special guest. Today we have Necie Love. Necie is Urban Marketing Coordinator for Interscope Records. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Necie as we're both advocates of women of color in the music industry and attending music events that are geared towards women in music. She is a rising star and exudes big boss energy, so I knew I just had to have her on the show. So without further ado, welcome Necie to Pub Royalty Queen Podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I really appreciate you for joining in and including your insight and helping other young women in the music industry learn what it takes to actually make it in this business. So without further ado, let's just dive right in. Tell us about your journey through the music industry and what roles led up to you becoming a marketing coordinator at Interscope.
Yeah, so I started off in the music industry at Reach Records, record label based in Atlanta, Georgia. There, honestly, that job kind of fell in my lap at the time. I was looking to work within production, but it was perfect timing. And I came in on just starting off with doing marketing management and social media rollouts. I'm an event, in helping with event planning and all. But then at the time, there was a person that came in and left the company who was overseeing creative, all photo and video production. And so I just kind of closed my mouth, don't get fed. I was like, can I help with this? And it was perfect because I was able to learn and go forward and just kind of get back into something I was always already passionate about, which was production. And so from then on, I was then promoted to marketing operations manager and was able to join my marketing efforts and abilities, and then also was able to handle all production. And honestly, that was a very big pivotal time because I think being a part of the visual aspect along with the actual marketing aspect of listening to the music and creating a marketing timeline showed how much those intertwine with making something come to life visually. So that was a really big pivotal point starting off in the industry. And then from there, I moved to LA. My mentor was starting a management company. He was a general manager at Red Light Management and took his clients, started his own very well-known manager, Black man as well in the entertainment industry. He had 5 clients and he moved me and my previous colleague down to Los Angeles, where we managed 5 artists, just 3 of us in a WeWork space. And that was my first year in LA. My goal was to move, even though I loved Atlanta so much, it was I felt like I was hitting a glass ceiling. So I really wanted, all the companies, of course, were in New York or LA. So getting to LA was a big accomplishment, a big goal. And under him and working with the artists that I got to work with, which were Emily King, Luke James, Michelle Williams, Destiny's Child, Leon Thomas, and a few, Corey Henry. There was a few others as well that we were able to cultivate and be a part literally day by day of these artists' journey. And I learned so much there as well, where I was able to oversee and coordinate and handle, manage, or whatever you want to title it, but booking and performances for Luke James. We did Dear Mama together for VH1, their Mother's Day special. I coordinated and oversaw his Soul Train performance for BET with Ro James and the rest of our team with BET. And I also helped Michelle Williams through The Masked Singer. That was really fun. We also even had to wear masks during her rehearsals and everything, so nobody saw our faces. It was an incredible experience all the way through. So that was amazing to go through that with her as well, Essence Festival and so much more. So I got to see a lot of things back in, and that was my favorite part about management. So coming out of Christian hip hop to management, which was more an R&B space, I'm now at Interscope Records, where I joined them in the middle of the pandemic in May 2020. And my 2 years actually is next week. So it's been crazy. Thank you. And I actually saw The Office for the first time last week. So that was incredible. Literally being at this company for 2 years and learning virtually was definitely an uphill battle, but honestly, we're making it through, and honestly, just looking forward to what's to come. So yeah, that's a little bit about my journey in the industry so far. So
That's such a, I mean, honestly, like to have the experience of working directly with the artists, I mean, that gives you a little bit more insight into their day to day, what their expectations and needs are, aside from just like the creative aspect of creating a campaign, etc. So that's
Mhm.
a valuable skill set to have. And I'm sure like you're building not only, these artists, but your own reputation in the music industry because of your likability and sociability aspect to, building those relationships. So, and then
Right.
on top of that, I know you mentioned that your mentor was a Black man coming up in the industry as well. Talk a little bit about that in your mentorship. Like, what mentors have you had, and what was their involvement in your development?
Well, yeah, I've had mentors of both men and women, but Jonathan Azu is his name. He was just such a pivotal like attribute still in my life as well. I think believed in me during a time where I was learning how to believe in myself and was able to like
Mm,
call out things that I didn't even know I was good at the time. And with his, even with his like busy schedule, like he always made time to like listen here when I was just learning and like failing, but feeling forward and like just kind of like figuring it out. He was never afraid to tell me, like, being honest with me a moment, like, hey, this should be like this or whatever. But once he also had the patience of like learning everybody has different learning styles. And he picked up on that and was very sensitive. And I think that's one of the strongest attributes that he has is that he's really good with people and how people intake information. And I feel like when you understand each person receives and communicates differently, you learn their aspect and then that's how you build with them. And I think like that's something I
mm,
learned from him as well, because he was really patient with me in that way. And even with our artists, because all of our artists were all emotional creatives as they
right.
all are. And so seeing how gentle and but also logistical he was with them. Like, let's be real, but I feel you. Like, and that's one of the
Mhm.
biggest things that I learned from him. So he was definitely, and still is, I still get to work with him now. He's now a manager for an artist I coordinate for as well now at
Oh,
Interscope. So
wow.
the full circle. So
Right.
super grateful for him
360.
and how much he's been a part of my journey as well too. So shout
That's
out to him.
amazing. And I want to shout out all the supportive men out there in the industry that see the potential in us and actually help us to rise to the occasion, help us to learn what we need to learn to move forward in our careers and empower us to speak up and do what we need to do out here.
Yeah, and shouting out his
Um,
company, Culture Collective. If you haven't heard about them, that you will. They have a roster of great artists, so definitely look out for them as well.
Amazing. So there are so many challenges that women of color face in the music industry. Can you describe for us one challenge that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, there are plenty. I think one of the biggest things that I had to overcome are still, learning as well is that obviously this industry is extremely competitive and people are constantly artists, whether you work on the back end or executive coordinator, assistant, or artist yourself, where you're more public or a manager or whatever, there always are layers of comparing our works to someone else's and what everybody else is doing. And then obviously social media is a big part of that.
Yes.
So I think the biggest thing that one of my favorite docu-series is the Defiant Ones with Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. Their stories and how they've aligned through like, it was so crazy because that was my favorite docu-series before even being at Interscope. But he said something there. He was like, if you ever watch a racehorse and they have blindfolds on and they can't see the
Mhm.
next horse to the left or the right of them, but all they can do is focus ahead. They're not thinking about what's going around them. They're racing forward. And it's great to connect and build and like link with people to like grow together. But when it's your journey and trusting that. And I think that's one of the biggest things that
Love
I've had to
that.
learn throughout this journey so far.
That is such a word, like being able to just stay focused and not be distracted by the things that are going on around you, or like you
Mm-hmm.
said, comparing yourself to other people's journey. And we all have our own journeys to live and own lessons to learn. So, yeah, that's such a
We
word. I
don't
feel
know what
like
they went through. Yeah. And so,
exactly. We're all going through our own obstacles. I think that's part of the reason why having this podcast is so instrumental in helping people to build this camaraderie with one another, because we do have shared experiences, but at the same time, we have some very unique things that have happened to us that we can offer and help to realize that we're all in this together.
right.
We're all going through something. And so just to create that sisterhood and that bond, camaraderie and understanding, I think is really important. And that
Exactly.
helps to eliminate a lot of that competitiveness too,
Yeah.
because we're taught to compete against one another.
Yeah.
There's not enough space for everyone. So
Right. Because as Black women, I think we automatically sometimes have this like defense mechanism because we already think that someone's like trying to one up us or like be against us.
yeah,
We constantly are having to fight against being belittled, not only by other women, but men, other aspects when they're working
yeah,
on our own like lives at home, like personal situations, friendships. So we're always like on defense about everything. And I feel like that's where we get this whole like Black stereotype of being angry.
absolutely.
But we have so much that we're fighting through every day. Like, of course, we're going to be a little uptight, but I think it's easier when you start to like at least let your guard down a little and try to build and connect with the next person and at least learn their experience and then also learn
Yeah,
their experience to understand why they think and the way they do and why they move the way that they do, and then have compassion within that too as well.
perfectly said. I feel like that I just agree completely with what you just said. Nothing to add there. Like, what was your mama I made it moment? You know, the moment that you realized that you were headed in the right direction, and what characteristics do you attribute to having reached that point?
Honestly, I think that I'm still working through or would like to. I haven't reached that moment just yet, I believe. And I think it's only because I think it's the Aries in me, where it's always something we're
Yes.
trying to accomplish and obtain. But I will say, moving to LA and working at literally the number one label, like that has, even through the pandemic and how much we were able to like achieve through the pandemic was incredible. Even like virtually, I wasn't even in the office, but like knowing that I was in LA. And as we're in here now, this might be the first summer we've ever had like actually outside and like being able to network and do coffees and things like that. So I think that once things start to move a little bit more and kind of we get into a little more of a normalcy of actually like being rented, I think it's all going to start like settling in for the most part. But so far, I'm just honestly just truly grateful because my goal was to get to LA, being originally from LA and always wanting to come back. And then now I'm here and working in a field that I love so much. I think that's rewarding within itself.
Huge.
So.
Yeah, it's a feat. I mean, not everyone gets to move with their job,
Yeah.
and then not everybody gets to come to LA with their job. So that's
Right,
another
exactly.
thing, so that's definitely a blessing and something extremely unique. And to obviously be grateful for. I mean, LA is one of those places very easy to network and connect with people because everybody's trying to climb the ladder. Everybody's ambitious and trying to make something of themselves. So obviously that energy just kind of you feed off of that energy and it helps to motivate you as well. So congratulations, exactly. That's huge.
Thank you.
That's huge. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we don't get a chance to really like sit with the things that we've accomplished.
Yeah.
And we tend to minimize those things. So
yeah, maybe I'm minimalizing. Honestly, there's probably a list of things that I think it's easier to point out the things that you want, like you're aspiring to grab to. But yeah, definitely. There's a lot that I've been able to really have my hands in on and like wow, like watching like this. And probably would have been the Soul Train Awards, like going back in, mapping out the performance with the team and then like see it performing, like being second row. I'm like, wow, like this is crazy. Like
it's a real moment.
Those are the surreal moments, like definitely. So definitely looking forward to what's ahead this next year. There's a lot coming. So yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
It's just the beginning. I feel like I said, you are a rising star. I wouldn't say you're at the very beginning of your career, but you've already created a foundation for yourself. You're, building your connections. You're going through a lot of the, I guess now politics of the corporate world and stuff like that. But you're keeping your head on straight and you're focused, like you mentioned earlier. So I'm excited to see what else that comes from your focus. So
thank you.
What advice would you give other aspiring women of color in the music industry?
I would say that I guess I don't know if this is corny to say, but I think the biggest thing that separates us as women, especially women of color as well, we are like nurturers, like a natural nurturers, and we're really good at listening and paying attention when something's off. And I feel like that's our superpower. And, we all have our mamas and our grandmas that like, something doesn't feel right. Something's telling me, like, no,
intuition be kicking in.
Intuition, like we know. And I think that's a superpower that we have in seeing the bigger picture because, working with and not saying that men don't see the bigger picture, women of other shades of color can't see the bigger picture. But I think that we just naturally have this like aspect about us when we can see like, let's sit back, let's align it. And whereas things can seem a lot more logistical, there's deadlines. I mean, we both work in corporate spaces. There's always like these like things. And it's like, okay, let's sit back and like, what is the purpose here? And I think that that's like our superpower, is like being able to listen, learn, and add that value. And like, okay, what's the story we want to tell with this? I think some of the greatest women in the industry have been able, I think Amber Grimes of the world and Bozoma St. John have been able to accomplish things in that aspect because they've been able to see the bigger picture and being able to tell a story outside of just the cars and the money and the things that come with the industry, the flashy things.
Right.
What's the bigger picture here? So I think that's something that we should always hone into, like listen to our gut, our intuition, and we're not crazy with adding some emotion to what we're talking about. Like, let's not let's just the plaques and what we can accomplish in just the Billboard charts. Like, it's the numbers are there. They all are proven facts that we're making progress, but how are we connecting with our audience? Like, how are we making an impact on people's lives? That's what music is for, you know, connecting with the language that we all speak. So I think that's
such a point that like we drive the culture. I feel like we do have this innate ability to be, like you say, visionaries, people that, you know, could have insight into the future and what's going to move the needle forward. And we tend to be the most dedicated. So that
definitely
on top of the innovation, on top of knowing the lingo and what's hot in the streets, and then the pressure of, honestly, sometimes I think it's performing, like the fact that we have to overachieve and overproduce in order to even get a little bit of recognition, I think is what drives us to create these things that other people
exactly.
So yeah, it just like in terms of advice for other women, I think the idea is just to like hone into that intuition, like you said, trust your gut reaction, especially, I mean, we're women in a predominantly male dominated industry. So, you know, our opinions, the way that we present ourselves is going to always be a point of contention. But, you know, as long as you're going in the room and knowing who you are and what you bring to the table, I think most people will resonate with that and see it through. So keep it pushing. Right. What are some common misconceptions that people have about women of color in the music industry?
I would say definitely that we may be just like a little difficult or maybe entitled to something that is like something's owed to us because there's things we constantly struggle with and the ladders we constantly having to climb. But I think that's just more of like a passion that I think we just all have, that we just want to be recognized, we want to be heard. And I think when people just try not to like automatically assume that it's like I'm being entitled, like, no, I want to be here and I want to add value to the situation and like just, you know, be open to that. And I think that that's a misconception for most people. But I think when people are drawn to that, like how, you know, my mentor, Jonathan Azu, was able to see that passion and was like, okay, like, I'm not going to be like, I'm not saying he was, or some other men or other people within certain workspaces can sometimes take that as intimidation or being intimidated. Like, well, why does she feel like, you know, I'm like, no, like, I want to help get us to the bigger point. And I may come off strong and very like, you need to hear what I'm saying, but like, hear what I'm saying and like not automatically just dismiss it because it may not be how you're used to receiving. And we may feel like we need to tone down our intellect or how we walk into a room or whatever. Like, no, I'm going to say it down because you're saying how you want to say it. So I'm going to be able to show as I am, like, whether it may not be however you're used to receiving this, but we're here and that's that. So, and owning that.
Is a fact. Yeah, I mean, obviously there are those tropes about women of color being aggressive or combative, and anytime we are asking for something, it's, oh, she's entitled. But here's the thing, again, it just goes back to like the work speaking for itself. Like, I shouldn't have to.
I shouldn't have to. Like I did. like yeah. But I think that's also
what I did.
You know what I did.
No.
And I was going to say that goes back to like what we were saying before about another thing to take away that someone can learn, another woman of color, is that's also our superpower, is being, you know, passionate and seeing the bigger picture and speaking up, but like also not getting too caught up in speaking up too much that you do forget the work, because then that you can always combat it with, I was able to actually see how this grew from this, and this really made an impact and this added value. And then there's really nothing that they can, say at them or argue with you. So, and I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn. It's like, okay, I can talk, let's also be about it and put in the work as well. And I think that'll speak for itself as well too. So
absolutely. And for what it's worth, I do feel like Black women or women of color do tend to do a lot more than is expected of them. So that's the part that's kind of disheartening sometimes. It's like when you are putting in the longer hours, when you are like not getting any sleep because you're doing more work than your counterparts, or you're in places that people don't tend to be. And so you can offer a different perspective than they can, and then that not being recognized is, frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So we have to learn to be empowered and step into our power, be advocates for ourselves and say, hey, no, I take ownership of this thing that I did, and you wouldn't be able to do this if it weren't for me. So,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I feel like I'm speaking from experience here, like
like you feel it right here in your chest, right here.
Yeah.
No, yeah, definitely. And I feel like that's why it's so important for companies like these major corporations to hire those who the audience they're trying to reach. Because I think social media and people of audience, like different art, is so diverse now. So we have to constantly hire people who are that can understand that audience that we're trying to reach. Like it's not no fun if you're trying to track, you're trying to grow something or anything without actually knowing or hearing from the voice themselves of people who actually fit that demographic, that have experience that, and so
that was such a diplomatic way to say, why is the narrative not being driven by the people that's creating
that actually are telling the story, that are part of the story? Like, what does that even mean?
I feel like a lot of it plays into the fact that we allow culture vultures to come in, and we don't really take the ownership. We share everything. And that's a good thing too. Like obviously we want to share with the larger public about what it is that we offer and what's special about us. But at the same time, it's like, dial some of it back. Like, don't give all the jewels out. Save some for us.
Exactly. And I think that's a whole other conversation, but that goes back to just like people of color and us learning how to build internally and like creating platforms for ourselves, but also being able to learn and be educated and not just show the things that the great rewards of all of our work, but also like building and learning aspects of like publishing and business and marketing and like the actual like knowledge in order to grow internally so that we don't have to share. We can do it ourselves.
Taking ownership of it. It reminds me of the movie Black Panther. And it always bothers me. I know this is like tangent, but in the movie, what's the name of Black Panther's character?
Oh my gosh.
I can't remember.
I mean, we know Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, we know Chadwick, but I can't think of the name. T'Challa?
Yeah, T'Challa. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Don't want to say
he
wrong.
Was in the press conference and was like sharing all the resources. I'm like, didn't we learn like not to like? Didn't we learn earlier in this movie that we shouldn't be doing that? Like, I get it that we're giving people and we're forgiving.
Too trusting sometimes.
But some things we should hold dear to and close to our own chest, just like other folks do. Like, I don't know. That's just my my on it.
I think that comes from also just us feeling like that's like almost sometimes our ticket in like waiting, because we hold those ropes or open those doors. The gatekeepers are the ones that are looking for us to give them that information. So like, if I give it, I'll have a way. And that's technically is true. And that's just how a lot of the systems are built. And so I think
we have to think of ourselves as the gatekeepers.
Yeah, we have to.
Like, what did it change that mind? They're the gatekeepers. No, actually, we are. We're
the gatekeepers. I'm giving you the key to open up the next door you're trying to open anyway. So
I have a key to a door you didn't even know existed.
You didn't even know what was over there. You didn't even look down that hall because you weren't looking down that hall, because that's not a hall that you were thinking about going down because you weren't familiar with it. But I know that hall because that's my story, and those are my people. Whatever, that's my story.
Exactly.
I think we could build a whole I don't know, like not a thesis, but metaphor off of a house, like literally. So
yeah, girl, it goes deep. I mean, the music industry is one of those places that's historically imbalanced, profitable off of the talents of people that look like us and isn't really an equitable space. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of voice those things and take a stand and say, hey, actually, no, I know I got the sauce. We
yeah.
have the sauce. Invest in us. So all that to say, if you could have done anything differently in your career, whether it was, mismanagement or being at the wrong place, like what would it have been, and what would you tell your younger self?
I would say, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned that I'm also like have been able to grow in a lot lately as well is being more decisive about exactly the vision that I have or what it is exactly I want. There were times where I felt like I spent a lot of time trying to either people please, or at that moment it made the most sense. But there were like moments of my life where I took risks because I just like trusted in that moment. And it was like that gut feeling, like just go with your gut. That goes back to that point. And anytime I took that risk, anything I was afraid to do, I knew I was meant to do. And so I think that trying those things have helped elevate me to the next thing. But anytime that I questioned myself too much, and that would slow me to be decisive, and then that was time wasted. So I think that's the biggest thing that I wish I could have like done better in my past, but you learn from it, and there's always time to move forward. But then sometimes there always isn't time. You have to act on it in that moment, or you'll miss out on an opportunity. So definitely learning what you want. And if you aren't sure, doing the research, talking to people, getting advice, having mentors to feed you, and just like constantly doing whatever. There are times where I'm like, I don't know if you have those moments where I'm like, I don't even want to listen to any music. I don't even want to hear anything. I don't even want to talk to anybody. I just want to like sit here, but I don't know what I want to do, but I feel like I need to do something. I started filling up that time listening to podcasts. Unless you are like, so listening to podcasts, like things that I could learn from on different topics. Yeah, definitely can like just continue to feed myself and finding ways. And that way I could learn ways to fill up that time. And then that has also helped me be more decisive because they may speak on an experience they have, that I'm resonating with and things like that. So that'll probably be the main thing.
I understand. I feel like that's the main thing that I hear over and over again is like, man, I've been gaslighting myself, or I waited too long, or I wish that I had really just believed in myself and went for it. Like there's so many things that I feel like we do that prevent us from reaching our target. But the thing is, like to our point earlier, it's about the journey. So even that's part
of the journey. I was like
the ebb and the flow, the hills and the valleys. It's all part of the process of getting to where you need to be. So I feel like a lot of people will relate to what you said. And yeah, girl, like podcasting, but meditating, just reaching out to people and checking in on people, like that's huge. I feel like this is part of the reason why the camaraderie and the sisterhood is such a huge thing too, because now you feel like you have someone you can lean on if you're going through something, who understands what you're going through, or just a listening ear, someone who has some experience that can lend some advice. Like those are pivotal things to get us to feel back in that headspace of, I've got this, I can handle this.
Right, exactly. Because sometimes you spend too much time with yourself and you're into your own thoughts. You get caught up in your own world, because that's easy for me to do. I can really be in my own world, good or bad. And I think that when you start to, let me just go hang out with a friend, let me get some lunch, or let me get out, just kind of get in your own world, and you start to get a different perspective from someone else's point of view. Or also someone may be going through something that may realize, okay, I may not have it as bad as I thought I did, or maybe just something I can encourage them.
Right.
Like, honestly, there's been times where I felt felt like, oh my God, like what is happening? And I felt so discouraged. And then I'm realizing, oh, my friend is going through the same thing. Like, let's help each other. Or you just put yourself in different situations. So definitely a lot of that. And then also piggybacking off of like wasted time is sometimes we can be perfectionists. I know I can. So then I'm not acting on something because it's not like this yet, or it's not like, whatever. And then that's a whole bunch of time wasted and feeling undeserving, and not feeling like I was, even though I put all this time into it and it's like in my face, like I didn't deserve that because I messed up here and I didn't do that. Or I feel like that whole imposter syndrome starts kicking in.
Right.
Like, no, like
Oh man.
you
That's
do deserve
another
this. It's
thing.
in your face. It's all good. Take it in. It's okay to be okay.
Yes.
Like celebrate yourself. Like,
Yes. And we're all human. I mean, we
yeah.
all make mistakes. That doesn't take away from our accomplishments at all. In fact, that's
Right.
what builds character. So yeah, I mean, imperfection is actually something that we should embrace
Yes.
because that's what gives us our unique abilities. So I really appreciate you sharing all of that because I feel like a lot of women are going through that where they feel like, man, I don't deserve what I received. I don't deserve the recognition. I don't deserve the accolades. I'm shy about receiving compliments and stuff like that. It's like, no, like you did the work. You did
Yeah.
what
Did
you're
the
supposed to
work.
do.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
take it the good and the
Look it
bad. You know what
in.
I mean?
Exactly.
So how can I know we talked about this a little bit already, but how can women of color advocate for one another, and in which ways do you advocate for women of color in the industry?
Well, I think that the biggest thing that we could do more, like we said before, is reaching out more and networking across. One of the greatest
Mm-hmm.
things that Issa
Mm-hmm.
Rae has shared with all of us is like networking across and not focusing so much up. And then also like sharing what you've learned with someone that is going through something, or like, maybe they just became an assistant somewhere at a job and you had already had the experience, pouring that back into them. But then also there's a lot that you can learn from them as well, and not just saying, oh, I'm just going to give you all of this, and just thinking that they're just
Mm-hmm.
learning from you. You also can learn from them. Like, what are they listening to? What's going on? Because each generation like is the next,
Yes.
main, space. And so I think that's the biggest point of like, just linking across, but then also lifting, like, pulling up and like figuring out how
Yes.
we can, learn from each other in that way.
Typical energy and bouncing ideas off of each
Exactly.
other, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And like we said before, all of us, especially women of color, we come with so many different personalities. Like some are really
Mm-hmm.
strong, some are reserved, some are more
Mm-hmm.
like carefree, some are more very cookie cutter. We're all coming like different personalities, but just when we learn and understand each other's like upbringings and backgrounds is the reason why people respond the way that they do, and just have
Mm-hmm.
compassion within that. And then I think that'll make it easier for us to like really work together,
Yes.
because there has been times I'm like, I felt like I connected more with these group of guys and I felt with these group of girls, because I'm like, why does it feel like this like defense? Like, why do I feel like I have to,
Mm-hmm.
change how I'm feeling, or I have to make them feel like either they're better than me so I can feel more comfortable, or I have to dim my light or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, to feel like, I've felt that way so many times. And I've come to learn that I'm like, no, I'm not. I've spent too much time dimming my light,
Yes.
other people feel comfortable, and that's not happening. Like,
Right. No,
you
and
have
you have to
to
show up as yourself authentically.
show up
Like
as yourself.
that's
Yeah.
the thing that actually attracts people to you is when you show up standing in your light. Like, yeah, don't ever dim your light for people. And that is I think that comes from insecurity when women place that kind of energy onto you. Like you walk into a room, you looking cute, you know what you're talking about, you work in the room, you know what I mean? And then it's
Mhm.
intimidating or they feel insecure about themselves because they see something in you that they envy or want for themselves. No.
Exactly.
No, I reach across the aisle too, like, hey, if I see someone that's like in the corner or, not talking to anyone or kind of like side eyeing
Mhm.
me, I'll kill them with kindness.
Yeah, kill them with
You know
kindness.
what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. But at the same time, don't let the kindness fool you, because we can have a conversation. It's all good. We can be able to reason and figure out what's
Yes.
going on as well, because you also don't want to be, that could be, I've always come off as very, sweet and kind, and I always
Yeah.
help everyone, but I also don't take that as weakness as well too, because we can also,
Exactly.
build together. Let's not rub off each other in the wrong way, initially. So I think it's always
Right.
about like how me and you met. It was like initial like connection, and it was just like, okay, like we have
Yes.
these stories, and then come to find out we have so much in common. And so I think you just listen, learn, and go from there. So definitely.
That's the authentic way to
Yeah,
build, I think. You start to get to know somebody and you realize that you have a lot more in common than you have not in common. So
exactly.
well, first of all, I really appreciate you again for being on the show. I know you have a busy schedule and you're out there doing your thing. So again, just very grateful for you, and you have such a bright light. I can't wait to see what you do in the future. So tell us what you're excited about, what you're working on at the moment that gets your gears going.
Yeah, so currently I'm working across multiple projects for an artist named Genevieve. She's up and developing, super excited about her. She has a deluxe dropping this Friday, April 29th. And
I'll cop that.
yes, so she released Division, I think last fall. So this will be the deluxe version. Of course, I work on projects across Benny Blanco and Kim Carson and Playboy Cardi and many more, K Camp. There's several, Amalu, Amare. There's a lot of different artists and things like that I'm really, really excited about. Ryan Trey is another developing act that we're working on as well. But he's from St. Louis, so I'm also went to school in the Midwest, so really excited about him, branching out of that area as well too. So those are some of the projects that I'm working across right now that I've been able to add some value to as well, and some projects for the next couple of months. And then also I have Acapella Creative, which is where I also video edit and photography. I love storytelling. So every blue moon I do it just for fun, but I also love to edit and, open to showing up and doing work events and just pulling out my camera. My camera is like my best friend. So I also love that creative side as well too. So anybody needing any editing or photography as well too, that's something that I'm also doing as well.
On that note, so where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
So I am also on Instagram, of course, my favorite one out of all the platforms. Instagram, it's Necie Love _. And then I'm also on Twitter, which is Necie Love _ as well. So both of the main two platforms I'm usually on. We're gravitating to TikTok. We will be more active on there as well. But IG is definitely where I'm at the most. So
awesome. Well, again, Necie, I really appreciate you. And until next time,
thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to seeing what's all to come with this podcast as well. And thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you.
Remember, stay positive, inspired, and true to yourself. Go out there and kill it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Pub Royalty Queen Podcast.